Three. Hey guys, good evening. It is me, Councilwoman Tameika Isaac Devine, and welcome to another evening of community conversation. I'm excited to have you guys here, and I'm so grateful that you are spending some time with me. We're trying to get on a more regular schedule, and so absent something crazy happening, I plan to be here every Monday evening at 7 to bring you another great interview. Today, as you could tell, I said absent something happening today. Y'all can see my background is a little different and my hair is all over the place. And that is because I had to work this afternoon, and so I did not get to my studio before we were scheduled to go live. So I'm here in my law office, and with this 100-degree day in famously hot Columbia, South Carolina, my hair has swollen up, and so you probably last week saw me in the braids. I'm in between braids. I'm gonna get braids again, but I've got a swollen head. So anyway, excuse that, but it doesn't matter because I'm still here to bring you really great information. So those of you who are here, make sure that you say hi. Let me know who's here, where you're tuning in from, and I'm gonna just jump in because we've got an amazing show tonight. I'm really excited about this because this is something I've been talking about. Today I have with me two guests, two really good friends and two amazing community advocates, Ty Watts and Regina E. Williams, and I'm gonna add them right now. Hey, Ty.
Hey, Tameika, how are you?
Okay, there you go. And then, hey, Regina.
Hello.
So, guys, just briefly, I don't really feel like these two need an introduction, but for those of you who might be new tuning in, let me just briefly introduce these two amazing community leaders. So, Tig is the president of the Braden Acres Cedar Terrace neighborhood. He has been president for 17 years now. And in addition to being president of his neighborhood association, he has been president of the Columbia Council of Neighborhoods, which is the umbrella organization over all the Columbia neighborhoods in the city of Columbia. He's also been president of the Richland County Neighborhoods Association, which is the umbrella organization of all the neighborhoods in Richland County. And he has served as president of the National Neighborhoods USA, which is the national organization for neighborhoods. So he has been entrenched and knows a whole lot about neighborhoods, how to get involved, things, how the power of neighborhoods. And so I'm so excited to have him. And in addition to all those hats, if that's not enough, Tig also has served on Columbia's Community Advisory Committee, which we'll talk a little bit about, but that's another way people can get involved with advocating for the needs of the communities in the city of Columbia. So welcome, Tig.
Thank you, Tameika.
And in addition to Ty, we've got Regina Williams. Y'all know Regina's actually been on community conversations before. She talked to me. We talked a little bit about neighborhoods then as well, but we were talking about education. She is a newly retired educator. Are you officially retired yet? I don't even know.
Not yet.
Okay. She is probably close to retirement, but I know she's been out, and we've all been out for a while. But Regina is an educator. In addition to that, she has been president of the Booker Washington Heights neighborhood for about 5 years. But I'm be honest, she's been involved for a really long time. But prior to Regina being president of her neighborhood and prior to Ty being president of his neighborhood, they both had neighborhood elected leadership that had been there for a long time. And so I think that the key part about them and the value that they can add is that, number one, how to get involved. Especially I hear from a lot of people, especially young folks, who are like, I don't want to get involved in the neighborhood because you got the quote old leadership who's been there forever. Well, that old leadership has probably been there forever because nobody else wants to do the work, and so they need more people to get involved. And so they're going to talk to us a little bit about their experience, but also about how effective these two. We've got a lot of amazing community leaders in Columbia who are very effective, but these two are really effective about working with city council, county council to really address the needs of their neighborhoods. They're effective at pulling together consensus and saying, hey, these are the needs, this is what we need, and how do we get there as a community? And so I really felt like that where we are right now in the conversation in this country where, we're talking about a lot of changes, breaking down systemic barriers to access to services, breaking down systemic racism, dealing with police brutality and things that people don't like in law enforcement. But all those things have in common is how people want to see investment in their communities. How do we invest in our communities? And these neighborhood leaders have been very effective to partner with folks to get investment in their neighborhoods. So anyway, with that introduction, we are going to dive in. So I want to really start first. I'm going to start with you, Ty, but I want both of you to answer this question. I talked about how the fact that you both are elected presidents of your neighborhoods, but you both of you succeeded longtime community presidents. What made you first want to get involved in the neighborhood association and then elevate yourself to an actual leadership elected position within the neighborhood?
Well, in my case, and I know everybody's case is a little bit different, but from my perspective, my journey as a neighborhood president basically started, like I said, about 17 years ago. And what I found is that after we had bought our house and we had settled in and we had gotten our business ready to go, and it was moving along pretty nicely, that I felt like I had a personal tug inside my own heart, saying I had to give back in some way. Some of that is, of course, how I was raised, but more importantly, I felt like I owed it back to my fellow neighbors to give something back. And it just happened to occur that the stars lined up right, and there was an advertisement that was put out there asking for somebody to kind of step up because the neighborhood president that had served after Ms. Massey and prior to me had taken a position and was going to have to give up her position. So I always like to joke to say that the first neighborhood meeting I ever went to, I actually got elected president. And then I also throw in another joke that says that only happened because I went to the restroom and they decided to hold the election while I was in there. And then they came out and told me I was elected. But the truth is that I did have an internal tug inside my heart saying that I owed something back to my community. And I know a lot of other people who have had that same kind of experience, but it's one of the best journeys I just ever decided to take. And I'm glad I kind of listened to that little voice inside my head that was telling me to give something back.
All right, great. How about you, Regina?
Well, this is the community, and I jokingly say, but it's very true. I was born in this community. I was born on the street, not literally, I was born in Fort Jackson, but on the street where I now live and own property. My mom lives right next door. I walked across Beltline before it was paved and went to St. John Baptist Church, walked the other way and went up to Sarah Nance Elementary School, where which is now the Belfield Cultural Arts Center. And I was always encouraged by the neighbors. They would see this little fat girl walking and say, "Girl, you awfully pretty." Even though I knew I had on the ugliest dress, I was always beautiful to them. And they always encouraged me. And that is what neighborhoods were about. Probably the worst disciplinary action, I'll say, to be politically correct, that I got was because a neighbor saw me take a dime from a man who said he knew my granddaddy, who was a blue ribbon cab driver. And I didn't know anybody was watching. But when I got home that afternoon, my mom really laid it into me because you don't take money from strangers. So then I went off to college. And when I came back, by that time, Ms. Belfield had retired. And she was the president of the neighborhood. And she ran it with an iron hand. So I really and truly did not get as involved as I wanted to get. So I just kind of, as they say, sat back and just went ahead and did what I had to do, went on into it. I was in Fairfield County. And then later on, after her passing, the neighbors came to me and asked if I would consider, because things were starting to get out of hand and they needed someone to work in the community with city council, with county council. And I was scared. And I said, if you all will walk with me, I'll do it. We can do this together, but it's not just for me. So that's how I came back and wanted to come back.
Wow. And for those people who heard her say Miss Belfield, if people hear the Belfield Center, Catherine Belfield Center at Booker Washington Heights, that is named after Catherine Belfield, who was the long-term president. And for those people who actually have read my book, I tell the story about how I went to a community meeting when I had like one child, and someone chastised me for feeding my child McDonald's and not having a home cooked meal at home, and that was Miss Belfield. So anyway, so God rest her soul. Yeah, she ran it with the iron fist. But yeah, she had been president for a really long time, and so that is the neighborhood that Regina is president of. So I'm going to ask, and I'm going to start with Regina here. Can you think about, so there are so many I can think of, but can you just tell the folks who are watching, just name a couple of the positive changes that you believe the community has made based on needs that you guys have identified. And then also if there's any challenges that you've had in kind of bringing the neighborhood together to advocate collectively for the needs that you have.
Okay. Some of the things that we've done and I will always say we, because there's never an I. The first major thing was to empower the people who were in the neighborhood who had not been able to engage, who were nervous, who thought they didn't have a voice, and to give those folk a voice and to empower them. That was really, really, really a major piece of work for our organization. Another thing we did as a neighborhood, we went to every city council meeting to talk about our brown water, our corroded water system with the iron pipes, which led to brown water going into the houses. And although many of the houses had their own personal water lines changed, the water line from the meter to the road and in the roads were cast iron. So we kept taking glasses of brown water, jars of brown water. It was hilarious how we would always just show up with the brown water. As a result,
I remember.
And I will say that in the beginning, and what a lot of people don't understand, I am where I am now because of people who were patient with me and because I was coachable. Well, because I was coached and had to learn to be coachable. People would call me and say, Regina, I'm not sure if that's how you want to do things. I'm not sure if that. So therefore, I was able to eventually learn how to advocate positively for change. So we got we got the water lines. Now, not only did we get the water lines, but when the company came in, I was able to advocate with him to offer jobs for the people in our neighborhood to work. And I said, sir, well, what qualifications? He said, all they have to do is want to work. And so we were able to work with that. We also, if you recall, we had the Obama sign at the store over on Farrell Road. Well, that store had a history of shootings and robberies and all sorts of things. We wanted the sign removed. It wasn't a racial issue. It was because of the quality of things that were sold in the store and the things that were happening around the store. We were quite sure that President Obama would not have approved of it. So we were able to negotiate once their liquor license was getting ready to be renewed. So again, the neighborhood went up to the, what is it, begins with an A, the
ALJ, Administrative Law Judge Division
of the courts. Mm-hmm. And we filled that courtroom. And we were able to negotiate with their attorney and our attorney to get the sign removed and for them to actually become a part of the neighborhood association. And I'll drop in occasionally and I'll say, is everything going okay? Everybody's good. And so that was major. but nobody has come to ask us how we got our sign down so that the other one can come down. So, um, extremely active with our churches. Have a church coalition now, and that's with Bible Way Church on Piedmont, Cleves on Beaumont, and St. John on Fowler Road. We have fed hundreds of people during this pandemic, given away hundreds of thousands of pounds of fresh vegetables, thousands of masks. And we're working with the three apartment communities, that's North Point, the Colony, and Palmetto Terrace. And we're able to pull people out of those communities and really see what those needs are and advocate for them. So, um, also have a thing going on with cooperative ministries and something with Dr. Bobby Donaldson, who is writing the history of our neighborhood.
Yeah. So that is great. So I love that because you're talking about a diversity of things. It's addressing the needs of the community, but that you recognize there are different needs. There are things that deal with aesthetics and things that you don't want in your community, like the store. But then there are the needs of feeding people and that kind of thing. So that's great. So, Ty, what about you? What are some of the things that you feel like have been successes, and then any challenges you think you might have run into?
Well, actually, and to some degree, some of our successes started off as challenges, but I would be remiss if I didn't name the thing I'm most proud about in our community, and that's the fact is that for the first time in probably more than 50 years, we actually have a new park building down at Hampton Park. The Hampton Park Community Center was basically a project that was probably about 10 years in the making, maybe even longer than that, because we had complained about the size of our park building, which I think the fire occupancy was only like 50 people or so. So any good neighborhood meeting, in fact, I joke, one neighborhood meeting, we had 200 people there. And when County Councilman Greg Pierce got there, he immediately was concerned and he thought, is everybody here to jump on me about some vote I made on county council? And I was like, no, please relax. You're fine, you're fine. And he's like, well, why is everybody here? Why so many? And I said, well, there's 200 people here because the Krispy Kreme just opened up and we have a representative about some free donuts. But the good thing is that that park building really helped bring the community together for a common cause. And that was something else that long range plan that we've been working on for a number of years was getting our neighborhood a little bit more personally involved on the community level, because I'll speak about this a couple more times, but the homes that we live in are the single biggest investments we're probably going to make in our lives next to our children. And as a result, because we all share something in common with each of our neighbors, namely the community we've decided to live in, it only makes perfect sense that people should have some sort of pull or connection to their neighborhood. But getting them to participate is a totally different thing. And it takes a lot of different techniques and a lot of different approaches and a lot of different understandings of a lot of people's different backgrounds. But I'm most proud of the park building. But I'm very proud, too, of the fact is that we've got more people using our park building now, using the walking trail on our park, more using the tennis courts. I've even got some kids who like to play tag on the baseball field when there's no baseball teams. So in the end, what we've been really pleased with and what we've been able to do has actually been improving the park on a physical level, but also, too, on a individual neighbor by neighbor kind of perspective. Because when I first moved here with my husband more than 20 years ago, actually, this was very much a community that was about 30 to 40 years into the making. And so we had a lot of original homeowners who were living here when we first moved here. And over the last 20 years, I've seen a consistent change as far as those original homeowners either moving on or physically or spiritually in life. And making our neighborhood attractive for new people to move into was also something that we took on as an undertaking. And a lot of the things that we fought for and a lot of the events that we hold are very much the same reason what makes our neighborhood very appealing to new homeowners and new investors. And we're very proud of that because we are kind of contained in our community. There's very few places that somebody could build. And so that does nothing but actually help increase the home value, but also improve the livability factor of our neighborhood as well too. So there's several other things I could go on about, but those three big things I think are probably the things I'm most proud about with the success we've seen at Brandon Acres Cedar Terrace.
Well, I would add to that on the park building. The other thing about y'all's park building was it actually was not ADA compliant. And one of the things was being able to advocate that it was a need, as well as, sometimes people are like, oh, they want a new park building. We've got so many new things that we need to have. It's going to make it to a list. But when you're making your case, I felt that was really effective that you guys did, because you were able to talk about the needs of your neighborhood and needing a building that was ADA compliant, because you had older residents and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to point that out, because I think that's also a great way of knowing everybody wants something new in their neighborhood, and everybody wants the city or the county or the state to invest in the area. But with so many competing demands, sometimes it's really good to come together as a community and say, why is this important? And then be able to make your case. And then, really be able to, as a group, come together. I remember y'all coming, a group saying, we need to do this. As Regina talked about on the water, you come together as a group. And that sends a message to your elected and appointed officials. So definitely want to get into that. Dr. Sonia Davis Lewis is on. Hey, Sonia, good to see you. And then Tracy Grant Dixon, who Regina serves in the Food Policy Committee with Tracy. Thanks for joining us, Tracy. Good to see you guys. Anybody else who's here, make sure y'all share this conversation out so that people get to see it. And then post a comment or a question if you have a question for our guests. But let me ask this question. I really want to I'll start with you, Tag, but I want you both to address this, because this kind of goes into some of the things that you talked about. But one of the things is you're both presidents of neighborhoods that have homeowners and renters, but you both have neighborhoods that are older. And so I know that one of the challenges for some of the older established neighborhoods is when you have older residents who have been there for a while, and they, move on, as Ty eloquently said, move on either physically or spiritually. You tend to have those houses that are open, and either their family inherits it and either can't or won't keep it up, and it really can really be a challenge. And one of the things that I've loved, Tag, if you would address kind of some of the things that you talked about, like how do you keep your neighborhood attractive, and keep it stable for the older folks who've been there forever, but also keep it attractive for the new people who want to come in. And then Regina, after Tag, I would love for you to talk about the same thing, but from the perspective of someone who grew up in the neighborhood, and now you are back in the neighborhood. You have the house, you're renovating the house next door to your mom. So you are personally reinvesting in this neighborhood and coming back, whereas a lot of folks kind of go out and they don't come back. But how important that is, and why was that important to you? So Tag and then Regina, let's address those.
Okay, sure. Definitely. The homeowners versus the renters battle is something that we see a lot of. We don't just see it here in Columbia. We see it across Richland County. We see it across the nation. It's something that stretches as far west as Alaska, I've personally witnessed, and as far east as Maine. But all in all, we knew that we were going to, and this is something we've always been battling with in Brandon Acres Cedar Terrace, is how do you get more people involved? And so we actually did a couple of different things. Not only did we make a direct appeal to renters themselves to get involved with the neighborhoods, but we made certain, for example, when we used to pass out flyers to certain events, we would break them up by a street. And one time I asked somebody why they had so many uh, handouts, that they were giving back to me. And they were like, well, I didn't give it to those people that were on the streets that lived in the duplex because, they're just renters. And I was like, no, we need those people. We want to invite everybody in our neighborhood, because just because they're not involved with the neighborhood association, they're still a part of our neighborhood. And so making sure that our message was not just directed to the club, but all of our supporters was very, very important. So we did that in a lot of different ways, not only for our special events, but with our communications. We always distributed stuff to everybody that we could possibly give to. But the other thing we also noticed too is that for renters, we had to break down the mystique that we were all about enforcing rules. And, we had to kind of reshape and show that there's another side to neighborhood associations besides getting on you for parking on your front yard. And don't get me wrong, when somebody parks on their front yard, we're always going to leave a note letting them know, don't do that. But we wanted to let them know that that's not what we're all about. So breaking that down was really important for us. And we saw more people get involved. The other thing we did too was for those people that owned multiple pieces of property in our neighborhood, we actually went to the homeowners and basically said, listen, you're a part of our neighborhood. If you have good renters in here, that attracts other good renters across the street from you, and we can build something together. And so reaching out to those homeowners, especially a lot of people like to call them absentee landlords, but I'll just call them landlords, was really important for reaching out to people and building that community that we strive to build. And then the third thing I'll say is that getting everybody together on the same page was really really easy for us to then go into a message of building community pride, and we did that in a number of ways, from creating our parking decals to help our police officers look for those cars that belonged in the neighborhood, but also kind of give some sort of advertisement out there in the public for our neighborhood was really important. And putting street sign toppers in our neighborhood, letting people know that when you turned in, you lived in Brandon Acres, Cedar Terrace. You don't normally see that in a lot of communities. And then doing other things like gear and notebooks and stuff like that was really important too. All of those things help build the pride of the community. And I wanted to purposely end on neighborhood pride, because if there's nobody else I know that has more pride for a neighborhood, it's Regina, and with Booker, Washington Heights. So I'm going to stop there and let her talk about that.
So Miss Regina, and let me tell you, Deborah Pulley says, "Hey Regina," and Fred Owen says, "Thank you, Regina, Tig, and Tameika for this live event." So thank you guys for watching. But yes, ma'am, Miss Regina.
So we're talking about okay.
Yeah, so two things really about kind of the balance between a neighborhood kind of turning over. I guess that's really what I'm talking about, is a neighborhood turning over. You both have older neighborhoods where you have people who live there for forever. And just a prime example, I mean, we talked about Miss Belfield, who was the neighborhood president for years. She passed away. Her family inherited it, didn't keep the house up, and so it ended up not being a contributing resident of the neighborhood. And so I know that you both in your neighborhoods, and Tig has addressed some of the strategies they use. What are some of the things that you are doing to try and keep that neighborhood investment and the pride? And particularly for you, I'd love for you to talk about kind of that mindset or that thought process you had about saying, I'm gonna come and live next door to my mom in the house I grew up in, so that I can still be reinvesting, putting my money where my mouth is, investing in my neighborhood.
Right. Okay. So as I said, I went away to college, and it was funny because people didn't expect me to come back to the neighborhood, as many of us go away to college. I was at USC and on campus and a member of the Touch of Faith. But everybody thought I was going to come, Tameika, over to Brooklyn, because people on a touch of faith just usually migrate over to Brooklyn Baptist. And I said, no, I got to go back to my church, because my church, St. John Baptist Church, Reverend Dr. Roscoe C. Wilson, Mrs. Naomi Dreer, Catherine, so Catherine Hampton, so many people invested in me to go to school. And to think about it, that was, I'm 30 years in. So that was 30 years ago that they had faith in me. So I felt like I had to come back. So when the flood of 2015 came, I was forced to move from my family's home because the house was so severely damaged here on the street. And after, my mom stayed there, but it just wasn't enough room for all of us. So when I would hear my mom almost in tears from people walking down the street, cursing, throwing trash all over the street, having illicit sexual activities, because our street was rather dark, having being a drug house, it broke my heart. I didn't know what to do, but I would always make sure that she was okay and the people on this street were okay. And when the opportunity came, we could not control who people put into their rental property. But if I were to become the person in the property, then that would prevent what was going on. That would prevent that from happening. Thus, the negotiations for this property where I am. Also, I purchased pieces of property within our neighborhood so that I can build houses on those properties. So I have invested in the neighborhood that invested in me. And now I don't have a choice but to go out and invest in these young people who are coming up now and letting them know. You see, I also stayed in Washington Carver Village, which is the colony apartment. I stayed in there as a child, letting them know if I got out, you can get out. And I'm going to help you because somebody helped me. And I'm going to find other people to help you because it takes a true village. So that is why it is just so important for me to be a part of this community and ask other folk. Now, how do we keep involved with what's going on? We look at who's moving out. We have cards with all of our business cards with our numbers on them. Our neighbors know, especially our older neighbors. And then this summer, we were able to really keep a hand on our older neighbors because we worked with Small Sugar.
Mm-hmm. Sarah Simmons, yep.
Serve and Connect, to give food to our seniors in our communities. So we got to see them and touch base with them from Palmetto Terrace to the Colony to North Point. We got to touch base with our neighbors and keep them safe. So that's how we keep the community going, and we invite other people to come in because we know this house is getting ready the family's ready to sell this house. Make sure we can ask them to make sure they're careful about who they sell the houses to and what's going to be the purpose for the house. And then we get to meet the new owners and ask them to be careful about who they put into the house because we have a neighborhood association that cares.
And I really, that's a good way to end that. Well, my next comment was going to be, when I put out there, so when I first thought about having this conversation, I put on my Facebook page, I asked the question, I said, how many people are involved in your neighborhood association? And if and why are you or why are you not? And I had lots of folks comment that they were. I had several people who had commented about not being involved because, and they gave reasons, and it was very clear that those were homeowners associations not neighborhood associations. And so I want to make it very clear that nothing against homeowners associations. I know that they do a lot of great work. But when you are in, when you are in the Northeast, if you're in Summit or Lake Carolina or even Harbison or other areas, you may have a homeowners association that was done at the time your houses were built. And so it put in restrictions and several things. There are not many homeowners associations in the city. We have neighborhood or community associations. And I do think that there's a difference, because I think a lot of times when you have the homeowners association, you have a board who makes decisions for the entire community, and they are kind of, like Ty said, enforcing the rules, making sure your fence isn't too big and making sure that your yard is cut and other things. And not to say those things aren't important in the city, but the neighborhood and community association is really about the community, and it is inviting people to be a part of the community to make decisions on behalf of your community, instead of just having a board who's doing that. So I do think there's a difference. And I like that you said a neighborhood association that cares, because we've got, of course, I'm a big proponent of our neighborhood associations, and we've got some great ones in the city. And I've seen lots of great things. Even my neighborhood came out with these wonderful signs that, we all purchased, where, it says, I believe, Black Lives Matter, love is love, no human is illegal. And it went into a lot of issues. And I love being a part of a neighborhood who wants to make that public stand that everybody is involved, everybody is included, everybody is welcome. And I think that's what I get from both of you guys. Ty mentioned a little bit about the emphasis on making sure to reach out to renters. And I do think that there are some renters, people who are renters, who either feel like, oh, I'm not going to be welcome because I'm not a homeowner, or just that, well, I'm a renter, so, I'm just not going to go because I'm too busy and I may not be here. Tell me about why is it important for renters to be involved in the associations just as much as homeowners? And either or both of you can answer that.
Well, in our community, we make, because we have so many renters, we have more renters than we have homeowners, and we need them to be a part of the neighborhood, and to have ownership in the neighborhood, and eventually possibly have ownership by purchasing the house where they are renting. If they feel like they belong, they'll be more inclined to pick up the trash. They'll be more inclined to think to turn down the music because somebody older lives next door to them. And we really have a clause where if you are a renter and there is a vote and the homeowner gives you permission to vote on their behalf, then you can participate in the vote. And that's a part of our bylaws if you live there. So that's why it's important for us. And we just want people to belong. There's enough divisiveness. I saw those signs in your neighborhood and I want some. But there's enough division without coming to our homes and our neighborhoods and having division. That's where it's supposed to be a place of peace. So that's why it's important for everybody to feel as if they belong.
That's so true. Ty?
Absolutely. What I would also kind of, Regina hit it on the head perfectly, and it's all about making sure that everybody's involved in the process and included in the process and participates in the process. But more importantly, it also kind of gets to the fact is that we are all in this together, whether we realize it or not. Just like we're all in it together with COVID, we're all in it every day in our communities. And, and I talk about this a little bit in some training seminars that I've done in the past, but it really goes back to a couple of key items, which is 60 years ago, people would gather on the front porch of their house. And we basically had a front porch kind of culture for basically the baby boomer generation. And that's where people started looking out for one another. And with the advent of the telephone, that's when kids were getting spanked when they got home because Their neighbor down the street saw what they did when they got off the bus stop, and by the time they walked that mile down to their house, mom or dad had a switch in their hand ready to go. But um, but over the last 50 years or more in particular, as Americans have been working harder, just to get the bills paid and to provide for their families, somehow, some way, we've gotten away from that front porch culture and taken up residence in our backyards. And now I'm seeing people no longer participate in their backyards and just staying completely in their homes. So we've got to find a way that gets people comfortable and acclimated to knowing that it's not only okay to communicate with their neighbor, but to get to know their neighbor, forge a relationship, and really start planning those roots. Because it's not until you start planning those roots, namely buying a house, for a lot of people, until they start getting that internal feeling about contributing a little bit more to the people around them that they see every day. I will tell you this: when I was a renter, I was a horrible renter. Those people that drive, 15 miles over the speed limit in the neighborhood, blaring music. That was me. Until finally, I've decided to finally kind of grow up and realize that, I do want a home that I can live in for, 30 years or however long. And so we've got to get more people looking at, their neighborhoods that they live in, to take that next step and to take that next leap. That's why neighborhood associations and homeowners associations are important too. And why I always encourage them to always not only plan for today, but always keep in mind what happened yesterday. So when you make the decisions that affect tomorrow, you'll make everybody as happy as possible.
Yeah. Let me share with you a couple comments people have shared. Miss Gilliard says Regina really cares about her community and is very active. So that, amen to that. I think we all know how active Regina is, which that's going to be my next question for you guys about that. Pamela Greenlaw says hello. Tameika says, hey Pam, how are you? And Yvonne Murray says neighbors should live in peace and not be divided. That is so true. So that's actually a wonderful comment. Let me ask you about about the being active, because I go to less, of course, less now because people aren't meeting or they're meeting virtually, and I go to less because I have kids at home and so I can't be out as much as I used to. But when I do go to community meetings, there seems to be just usually the same couple folks. Sylvia Jenkins is here, and Sylvia is very active, one of our very active community leaders. Thanks for joining, Sylvia.
Yeah.
And if you have anything you want to say, chime in. We appreciate it.
Yes.
But there seems to be the same old folks. And when I look at what you guys do as neighborhoods, I mean, you do awesome things, from all the things Regina was talking about, feeding the seniors. And I know you're very active with the kids, and, neighborhood cleanups and national night out. And, our police do the front porch roll calls with the different communities. And, there's a lot that goes on, and it's really hard for 4 or 5 people to plan all of those things. So how can somebody, if they're listening to this conversation and they're like, you know what, I'm tired of just talking, I want to be involved, what's your recommendations for them? How do they start getting involved in their community association?
I'm gonna let Ty answer that first, because I've learned so much from him, and I'm just honored to sit. I was honored to sit under his tutelage. So,
I appreciate that setup, Regina. But no, I will say this: it takes a lot of originality, because, but it all comes down to one important thing. It really comes down to outreach and and getting more people involved. I know that this sounds crazy, and I have not done it this year, but usually once a year I will go actually canvass every house in my neighborhood, just to kind of update information, provide some more background information on the neighborhood association, just introduce myself, put my card number out there in people's hands. So I think that getting more people involved, really kind of comes down to, first, we got to show that we want them involved. The second thing is that you do have to keep a robust activity for your neighborhood association. You do have to keep life pumping into it all the time, which means you do need to enlist an army of helpers and volunteers. Having that support can help spread your message wider. And then the third thing I'll say is on the end, at the when we're looking at things, we've got to remember that our neighborhoods change constantly. Over the last 20 years, I've seen just about 86% of home ownership changes in my neighborhood. And while that sounds like a lot, it really isn't, because in the grand scheme of things, that's about 5% of the homes every year. And so we just need to remember that when I look at the city of Columbia and how many people have moved in, I can tell you that more than 40% of the people that voted in the last city election were not city of Columbia residents as prior to 2012. We've got to remember that while there are people out there saying that our city isn't growing, the fact is that our city is growing, and there are more new people coming into our communities. And we've got to make sure that we put our best foot out there. So maintaining that activity level, putting out that outreach, and making it enjoyable. I know it sounds like I probably provided that answer a couple questions ago, but those have been the three hallmarks that we've really tapped into with Brandon Acres Cedar Terrace, with getting more people involved and feeling welcome. And the other thing is this too, I want to close with this, which is there are honestly a lot of people I meet at the doors. Again, I haven't done it in 2020 because usually I do it in the summer. But there are a lot of people who will give us, our $10 nominal membership fee and say, we love what you're doing. We know we can't participate a lot, but we applaud you and we want you to know we support you. And so that's one of the reasons why we have a pretty high membership fee, or rate of membership, and why we have such a low fee because of that. Is because we've embraced those people who are on the sidelines supporting us. So that's probably the best answer I could provide as far as how do you get more people involved.
Wow. I will say that you have to have an open mind. I often tell people that I've sat with kings, and I've hung with, being a graduate of Eau Claire, I've hung with people who may decide to sit on the corner after work and have a few with their buddies, if you know what I mean. So you don't look down on anybody, because but by the grace of God, there goes I. So I also believe in growing leaders. So we had my daughter, you see her with me all the time. Well, in the beginning, she's not the person who she is now as far as working in the community. She thought she could do what I do without going through the necessary steps. And she soon learned you couldn't do that. So you have to grow your leaders, and you have to invite. If I'm headed into a community meeting and I may be getting something out of the car, and I see some young people coming from Johnson or Perry, hey, y'all, come on in. I got a drink or something for you. You're hot. I got some water. But I need you all. So they will come in always, or can y'all help me to carry this in? And if I get them in, I can get them caught for just a little while. Then I will see those same people again as I'm going through the neighborhood. Another thing I do is go through the neighborhood and see people on the porch, walking down the street. Bonk, bonk. Hey, my daughter said, you know them. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I know them. Those are our neighbors. And you just blow and they wave. I'll hand them a baggie of face masks out the car. So you have to engage yourself with your community. And it's just so much more to say about that. And the last thing I'll say is you have to partner with people. We partner with Serve and Connect. We partnered with Servant Connect. Out of Servant Connect comes the North Columbia Youth Empowerment Initiative, which is the 29203 area, and also with Building Better Communities, which has opened a new empowerment center. So the work is so much lighter when you have more hands. And they come to us and ask us, what do you all need in your community? And we get together and we work. They just don't come and say, this is what we're going to do. They ask us what is needed, and then we go to work together happily.
That's good. Yeah. And I think the big key there is we need more people. We need more people get involved, and just like you guys did, and had come up. Couple folks. Ed McDowell. I want to say this. I'm gonna put this up. Ed McDowell said he's on a Zoom call, but he's listening. Thanks, Regina and Ty, for your leadership. So thank you, Reverend McDowell, for your leadership. We're glad to have you.
Yes.
I did want to put that up. But Pam Greenlaw has a question. So her question is, what sorts of methods are there for weatherizing homes? Renters may be able to pay rent, but their utility bills for heat and air conditioning are too high. Pam, there's a couple programs that the city has, and if you guys want to know anything specific, chime in and answer. But I know we're still kind of on lockdown, but they are still working. If you call community development, we have partners that have groups that will help do it. They do it a lot. Some only do it for seniors, and so it kind of depends on who the renter is and what their needs are. But there are nonprofits out there that will help with weatherizing, and the city actually has some funds. Or at least we did have some funds for that. I'll have to double check to make sure there's still some out there, but there was some. Did y'all have anything y'all want to add to that?
Tameika, I'm thinking that if I recall, at one time the funds were only for property owners or people who were actually living in the property, and then a program came about for people who owned properties and maybe had renters.
Or renters, yeah.
So again, that's through community development.
Yeah, which we do need to bring that program back, and that's a great way that people can advocate. People weren't really using the money, and so it got redirected to something else. But I think that is we need to do that, because some people will own property, like we talked about, people who might have inherited houses in neighborhood, and they don't necessarily have the money to keep it up. So we are winding down. I did want to give you guys the last couple minutes of just some thoughts on what has being involved in the community association done for you guys personally, and why would you recommend that others get involved in their various communities and get to work? I'll start with you, Regina.
It's enabled me to show love to everybody. It has also humbled me. Know that there are no big eyes and no little U's, and empowerment is everything. Empower the people in the neighborhood, and they will want to come to the meetings, and they will want to help because they will feel as if they're a part of the community.
Ty?
Yeah, I'd have to say, my involvement with the community is best summed up by the quote, "You only get what you give." And I'm a firm believer that if you want to see, a community turn around, or if you got a problem and you want to, see a solution for that, then you've got to give something back. And not everything that we've always tried to do has been, perfect. We've learned a lot in the process. We've refined from that, and we've gotten better at certain things. But at the end of the day, I'm thankful that I did go to that neighborhood meeting, that very first neighborhood meeting. I'm grateful that I've listened to that little voice inside my head telling me that I need to give back to them, because it's made me a little bit better of a person, at least as far as feeling fulfilled. Again, not every project that we've tried to take on, we've been able to accomplish. But I do feel like we've always learned something from the process, and we've become better, if not, at getting things done for people, but just for at least trying to make a difference. And that's all that we can ask of people is, we're not asking for success. We're not asking to change the world in a moment's notice. We're just asking people to care a little bit and give a little bit back. And to see that actually happen and hopefully be passed down from one generation to the next, that's probably the most fulfilling thing for any neighborhood president, at least for any neighborhood president named Todd Watts that I
know. Great.
Todd, yeah. Todd, has being president given you more patience?
At times, it just depends on the situation. I will say this. The very first couple of years that I was a neighborhood president, I actually was very impatient. But I used to blame that on my youth at that time. But it's 17 years later, I can tell you that, yeah, I'm probably more of a patient person today than I was then. But it wasn't an easy process that happened overnight. It took a lot of learning and a lot of self reflection.
Yeah, good. Well, I just want to end with saying how much I appreciate you two for the work that you do, not only in your communities, but in the city as a whole. I mean, I think, the work that you guys do is not just for your neighborhood association, it's for our city. And our mayor typically says, Columbia is a great place and a strong city because we have strong neighborhoods. And we really do have strong neighborhoods. And one of the things that I hope people kind of got from this is that there's a place for you. If you don't know, there might be other organizations. There's great nonprofits in the city. So you might be involved in one of those and get involved, and that's fine. But if you are living in a community and you want to get involved, start off by chairing a committee, volunteering at something. But it's a great way to just really build that sense of community that these two folks have talked about and really advocate for the needs of your community, because all of our neighborhoods are different too. What Regina needs in Booker Washington Heights is different than what Ty needs in Booker Washington, in Brandon Acres Cedar Terrace. It's different from what my neighborhood needs in Earlwood from what Elmwood needs, which is right our adjacent neighborhood. We have different we have different values, we have different needs, we have different makeup of our communities. And so it is best for the community to say, this is what we need, this is what we want. And then you come to us as your city leaders and say, how can we work to get there together? So hopefully you guys have been enlightened and inspired by this conversation. And I know that these two wonderful people, they're both on Facebook. I know that if you want to get involved in some way, if you reach out to them, I know that they will help you, guide you, mentor you, whatever that is. So please reach out to them. And so with that said, I will just let you guys know I'm excited next week. They both talked about the young people and nurturing young people. So I'm excited next week. I will have Brandon Upson. For those of you who don't know Brandon is he is a dynamic young leader. I met him during campaign season, during the 2020 presidential campaigns, but he has started a new organization, a nonprofit called Amplify, and he's talking about specifically encouraging Black men to get out and vote and be a great voting bloc, but really just the importance of amplifying your voice and your vote, and ultimately your power. So I'm excited about that conversation. Just a couple more comments I want to read to you guys. Tracy Dixon said, thanks to each of you for what you're doing to build strong communities and families. Thank you, Tracy, for what you do. Yes. And Sylvia said, visit community meetings, and she's very inspired. Thank you, Sylvia. So with that said, I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in to Community Conversations with Councilwoman Tameika Devine. It is my honor to be able to bring you great conversations, and we've got some great ones coming up for you in the next couple of weeks. I'm actually planned out for 4 weeks, guys, so I'm excited. We've got some good conversations. So join me here. Hey, Ron Felder. Y'all, Ron Felder is on.
Hey, Ron.
One of our retired officers. So anyway, good to see you, Ron. But anyway, till next time, you guys have a great night. Good night. God bless. And I'll see you next Monday at 7 o'clock. Bye.
Thank you.